Everybody, welcome to Rev'd Up for Sunday. We are 2 out of the 3 clergy of St. Mark's Episcopal Church in New Canaan, Connecticut. I'm Peter Walsh.
I'm Elizabeth Garnsey.
And we're sorry that Father John can't be with us today, but we'll see if the two of us can mug along. So here we are at the end of the missionary discourse, and as I was thinking about this morning, I was thinking about Jesus in the backyard, like we were as kids running out a football play. He's commissioning the team, and he's laying out the 12 apostles, and he's saying kind of like this is going to be like when you get out there, and Jesus is the quarterback. And today we get the instructions for the receivers. So we are at Matthew 10, 40 to 42. Jesus said, "Whoever welcomes you welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. Whoever welcomes a prophet in the name of a prophet will receive a prophet's reward. Whoever welcomes a righteous person in the name of a righteous person will receive the reward of the righteous. And whoever gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones in the name of a disciple, truly I tell you, none of these will lose their reward." Okay, so that's the Sunday gospel, and we wouldn't even be getting started if we were in the normal Johannine way. And as I said, we're at the end of the missionary discourse. This is the third. We've had 3 Sundays in a row of this, and we get this very, very small little pericope, as they say. And even for a few sentences, it's full of kind of a lot of enigmatic kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the disciples up to this point, they've heard the Sermon on the Mount, which was an extensive, beautiful teaching, Matthew 5 to 7. And then I think 8, 9 is kind of lots of healings. We get the centurion saying how Jesus could heal his daughter even if he just spoke from afar. Right. The remote healing kind of thing. And now, and as you said, we've had a couple of weeks of the discipleship preparation discussion, and last week we talked about how the cost, I think, of the risk and the cost of following Jesus, and that it might even tear you from your family, because the cost is high and people are provoked by this radical restructuring of our social order and of our human order. And I think Jesus is always cautioning and preparing us to let go of our tribal divisions and our categories. And, he's always reminding people how our separateness is an illusion. And for some reason, we find a lot of safety in our separateness. And so, as I was reflecting on last week's gospel, that's kind of those were a little bit my afterthoughts. And I think here he's bringing them into this place of like letting go. You count the cost and then go out. And if you're welcomed, you're being welcomed in the name of God. And, the embrace of that is a real security for them. And I think that he's kind of putting a fine point on it here, that there's a high cost to going out in the name of God, and there's also a great freedom. And so, it is definitely the cost of discipleship, and now we get sort of the reward thereof. And particularly this case, we shifts gears a little bit to the reward of the receiver, not necessarily the reward to the goer. Yeah, true. So there's a kind of shift in this, and I think it's, to my mind, interesting because this is the call to hospitality. Yeah, hospitality. And we live in a very inhospitable world, and come to that in a moment. But biblical hospitality is a very big thing. It's not a big thing in our country, but in the Bible, starting with the Oaks of Mamre, where Abraham welcomes the 3 strangers, and Abraham, the great patriarch, goes out and humbles himself before them and rushes in the heat of the day and has Sarah make this enormous loaf, and he goes and gets his curds and milk, and so from that Genesis passage we get that all the way through, that hospitality is a big deal. And we get it in Matthew with Matthew 25, the hospitality to the stranger, and even in the epistles. In Romans we get hospitality. And this is right in here with hospitality. Yeah, it really is. And I'm noticing that I think I wouldn't use the word hierarchy, but there's a certain strata, that Jesus is sort of saying, whoever welcomes you welcomes me, Jesus. Whoever welcomes me welcomes the Father. Yeah. And then he goes down to the prophet status, the prophet, and of course Elijah being like the major, I think, iconic prophet, and he was received and, the way he was treated in the Bible. And then just what you mentioned, the Mamre, the strangers at Mamre that Abraham receives, is the reward of the righteous is the reward of Abraham for his hospitality, and he received none other than the divine into his household, and then we get finally the fourth one, even giving a cold cup of water to one in need in the name of a disciple. So he's got himself, the Father, Elijah, Abraham, even one of you. He puts them in the ranks of the most worthy kind of thing. It's not so much a hierarchy as he's making this grand connection between himself, the through thread of himself and God and all the prophets and the righteous, even Abraham and the disciples. He's sort of getting that they're all very connected and they're all sort of in the mission with Jesus and the mission of hospitality, like you said, and that he's drawing this, establishing this great connection. And I think that's where their identity lies, and that's where their sort of surety lies in their mission.
Yeah, I do like that, and I hadn't delineated the way you just did it, sort of from big to small, or God to us, or something like that. Mm-hmm. I was thinking of this in terms of Jesus sounding, Jesus sounding like the Johannine Jesus, where you get this whole question of when you welcome one, you welcome me, and you welcome the Father too, and that the through line through all this is Jesus, and Jesus's presence. In the word study, whoever is 5 times welcome is 6 times me, 3 times, and reward 3 times. And in all this, it's the meanness of it and the mutuality of it that is the connectivity, that it's in their each otherness that they experience the divine, just back like where Abraham and Sarah were. And so, that is really interesting.
Yeah, and I think simple as this passage is, it's the actual statement of Jesus' whole mission, which is hospitality and mutual hospitality and, embrace and inclusion. And he's out there to draw people in to something. So I think it's an interesting portrait of like his history, his heritage of the prophets and, the father Abraham. It's always been about that. And when the people have gotten it right, that's always been the point.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I think there's also a kind of maybe a nuanced thing in play here, or maybe a bigger thing that's not nuanced at all. So we're in the missionary discourse, right? And so this is, it seems he's originally speaking, or in the context speaking about those who receive the people he sends. Mm-hmm. And yet, we're in chapter 10, and in chapter 25, he's going to say, whosoever did this to the least of these, you did it to me. So who is it that we're to be hospitable to?
Right.
Those so-called Jesus missionaries, but is the Jesus missionary also the person who is, clothing the stranger, feeding the hungry, visiting me in prison, taking care of the sick? And then welcoming the stranger, those 5 things in Matthew 25, that those are Jesus missionaries too.
Yeah.
And so, we spend so much time on go-ness of things, and the discourse is about go. But I think it's kind of cool that this is about receiving. And even in things I've talked about before in our spiritual lives, we spend so much of our spiritual lives thinking that we have to go to God, when mostly we just probably ought to sit down and receive. Yeah, and so this is about changing the paradigm of the Christian way. Mm-hmm. It's not just about go, it's about this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's true that phrase, these little ones, is such a theme in Matthew. And it repeats all, as you said, Matthew 25, but also in Matthew 18, right, where he says it would, if any of you cause one of these little ones to stumble, it would be better for a stone to be hung around your neck and you thrown into the sea. I mean, it's pretty drastic, but I think the little ones in this community also means the ones among them, like within the community of faith, they even had people in great need among them, and to neglect their own needs was like a scandal to the community. And how would the world ever know that they could make these claims about Jesus and hospitality if they were neglecting their own?
Yeah,
and I think in some commentaries that talks about the Methodian community having, the little ones or anyone in need among them first, because they're a witness to what the community is supposed to look like. And from that, they go out and can tend the needs of anyone in need.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's one thing to go out if you're neglecting the needs of the poor among you,
right.
It's a scandal. So I have read a little bit about that in relation to this passage.
Oh, you're bringing a lot of stuff to me that I hadn't really thought about at all. So that's particularly interesting to me. I had thought about the little ones. Obviously, in Mark and Luke, the little ones have different reference points to who refer to. But in Matthew, the little ones refer to, the 12 apostles, and then to the Methodian community, and now to us. Mm-hmm. And I think it's sometimes interesting for us to think of ourselves as the little ones, for me, for you, for Rob behind the camera, for Father John who's out of town, and for our community, for us to be the little ones who are in need. But I think also the little ones has to do, it's a term of affection, a term of endearment. And what I'm reminded of in that is, so I have 5 kids. Anybody who takes care of one of my children when they're in need, I feel tremendous sort of heart movement toward those who care for my kids. And I think that's a little bit of what Jesus is talking about here. These are my children, mm-hmm. these little ones. And the reward of the heart is that how positive Jesus feels about those who are seeking to do his mission. And that I also know that, you would have this with Charlie. A friend of our kids comes into our household. We seek to treat them as our own children, mm-hmm. With that same kind of hospitality. And that, in our culture, we spend so little time on the idea of hospitality. And in so many other parts of the world, there are rites of hospitality and ways of hospitality, which are so important. Mm-hmm. And those in our own country, we don't welcome the stranger with our immigration policies. We live increasingly in walled-in communities. We drive around in cars, which are bubbles. We begin to lose our human connectivity. And these rules of hospitality are the very thing that we need in our culture, mm-hmm. In order to keep the social fabric of our togetherness together, mm-hmm. because so many things in our world are pulling our social fabric apart. And in one of our previous podcast, we talked about mercy, plop, plop, fizz, fizz, a little mercy to the judgment. And here I think understanding hospitality is the thing to bring our fabric together. Robert Putnam's book, Bowling Alone, which he wrote quite a long time ago now, is about, the atomizing of our social culture in the country and the need of things that was more people bowl, but fewer people are in bowling leagues. And he called upon religious institutions to bring our culture back together. And I think that this is Jesus' call about receiving each other, not allowing ourselves to be atomized, for it is in the mutuality of the culture. Hey, if we don't meet Christ in each other, we don't meet Christ.
Yeah.
Boop. Period.
It's a
End of
great
sentence.
Statement. Yeah, absolutely. And it's a low bar. Like Jesus says, whoever gives a cup of cold water to one of the little ones.
It's a low bar.
It doesn't take special powers or,
it's about time Jesus gave us a low bar.
Yeah. But, I think this is about paying attention. Someone who's thirsty, just have our eyes open to people who might want something or need something. If you have people over, you're always checking their glass. Do you want seconds? Do you want something to drink? It's to move around our lives like that. Like, how are you? And do you need anything? And how can I help? Or here's a cup of water. It's just a way of being, right? That's not very hard. It's just we don't pay attention.
I think that's a pen dropper for me.
Would you like a cup of cold water?
Yeah. But I think the beautiful thing about what you just said is just pay attention. we're again so distracted by so many things. We're, that quoting Jesus talking to Martha, but to pay attention and do the small things. I have said this before in the podcast, but something that meant a lot to me, a teaching by Martin Smith, the former superior to the Society of St. John the Evangelist in Cambridge. I was on a retreat with him once, and he spoke about, not one small thing will be forgotten in the divine economy, the divine memory, and that, Martin had posited that after we die, and when we come to a deeper understanding about the life that we are leading here in our earthly selves, that we will be able to see all the cups of cold water that we delivered, and what a beautiful thing it was, and in such a culture that is like rain on road, clunk, 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 but it doesn't seep in, that just a little bit of grace goes so far. A little bit of this and a little bit of that. I love what you say. I love that cup of cold water, that cup of kindness.
It's a great image.
I think you said cup of kindness once in one of your sermons.
It's an Old Lang Syne. Yeah, maybe I was quoting the Old Lang Syne, cup of kindness, dear. I think that it's beautiful how you're laying it out, that's it tugs at your heart when you see someone caring for someone else, especially one of your own kids. And I think by the same token that we'll see all the cups of water we delivered, we'll also see the ones that we didn't deliver. And then we get to Matthew 25, that to the extent you did not do these things, you did not do them to me. Yeah. And it is eye-opening. It's very, very awakening to realize just the simple needs around us, and how little it actually really takes to kind of step out of our comfort zone and do something. But yeah, and then you started to get into welcome and stuff. I think Jesus is also saying, don't waste your time when you're not welcome. That's in the next verses, that, shake the dust off your feet and all that. Yeah. He's like, just focus on delivering, and if it's not received, move on, because there's plenty of need. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a different passage, but I still think the spirit of it is just keep your focus, keep your focus.
Well, I think that, the interesting, and not to launch ourselves completely into that passage, but how that passage relates with this passage, I think is interesting. I think that the call to, back to your old parish, St. Bart's in New York, during its era of incredible fruition in the concept, Bill's concept, the radical welcome. Yeah. And I do think that the heart this all starts from the inside out, right? So Jesus calls us to a heart of radical welcome. And once our heart becomes radical welcoming, back to, decrease judgment in your life, the plop, plop, fizz, fizz of mercy. Once we begin to radically welcome people into our heart, we are more available to give them a cup of water, and to advocate for them getting a cup of water in the policies and procedures of our country's national agenda. That what makes its way to the Senate and the Congress to make no progress, because they have a hard time making progress in anything. But I do think that one of the things that Jesus is talking about here in the missionary discourse is a commissioning to go change the world. And so you wonder why people are pushing back? A lot of people don't want to change the world. And you're going to get clobbered for it. You're going to lose, family connection. You might get killed for it. But if you take the Jesus thing seriously, and you have the heart of Christ, and you head into the world with a heart of love, the way of love that he lays out into the Gospels, there's a lot of static and a lot of rumble tumble. But this passage, I think Jesus seeks to land the passage in a place of grace, and to say that you can do this. And, you 3 times, these are like 2 verses, and 3 times you get reward. And that there is a reward there. And that essentially, as you were pointing out earlier, as you went through the different folks being rewarded, the hierarchy of mutuality, that reward is the presence of Christ. I think that is the difference between somebody who is a humanitarian who does incredible things and has no connection to the divine being of Jesus, but what the person who has the divine being of Jesus within them as they go to live out that life, what they get is presence. And the presence of Christ brings with that a kind of grace and a kind of love and a kind of heart expansion, a kind of welcoming heart as a gift of the Spirit. And so I think what Jesus is saying here is this welcoming heart, this reception, because he says receive, receive, receive over and over and over. This receiving is a core spiritual value in the Christian spiritual way.
Yeah. Yeah, that idea of welcome and receiving, it's a real mutuality, like a magnetism, I guess.
Yeah.
We're looking for magnets.
Yeah, I like what you're saying here. I like the word magnetism too. I'm attaching to it. I'm drawn toward your magnetism. I do believe that, and we see this with particular people. There are magnetic people. There are magnetic people on the planet.
Yeah.
And if you take a look about what makes someone magnetic, oftentimes it's about the quality of their interior life, not just what they do on the exterior. There are people who have great power that you don't want to have a meal with because you're like, oh, I'm going to have indigestion, right? But there are people who have this quality of heart that we are drawn toward. And I think that what Jesus is talking about is, as in the Sermon on the Mount that you started off with when you were giving some of the context, that whole, verse in chapters 5, 6, and 7 is about this quality of heart, this inner understanding of the law to the interior self. And now he takes the interior person and sends the interior person into the outside world to deliver that interior message. And you're going to get super banged around, but in the end, it's good. I mean, I think that's kind of what this is trying to say is, in the end, this is good.
Yeah, yeah. Well, along with that radical welcome at St. Bart's, Bill Tully used to say the goal was to belong before you believe. When it created an atmosphere where people could just come and have questions. And, I think Jesus got that ethos too, just to receive.
Yeah.
Welcome. And then when someone has sort of like their wounded shell and they don't want to receive, I think when you keep persisting, we see this in pastoral care when some of our visitors who are visiting people, sometimes at first it's like, what are you doing here? And I don't want to talk. And, but people will persist. Eric Tunham's really good at this. And he'll make a relationship with someone. And before you know it, the person's looking forward to his visit. They have a lot to say. That they just cracked open and they find that magnetism within themselves. And I think a lot of people are like that. They just want to know they're safe. They want to know that they belong and that someone sees them. And I think that that's so much the work of love, is just to overlook a lot of hardness and shell and know that deep down in there, everybody is a little one that wants to be seen and safe, And so even though we at times are supposed to shake the dust off and move on, I think that the work of going out, being received, receiving others, welcoming, it's going to have its reward, which is a breakthrough, and it does change hearts and change the world. And but it takes some persistence and some overlooking, I think, of a lot of outer division, outer kind of resistance and repelling of the love. And eventually, people can really be cracked open.
I am super jazzed by the things you're saying today. Not like I'm not super jazzed by the things you're saying on other days.
Flag this podcast.
I am super jazzed by the things you're saying, and that's why I had to take notes so that all that jazz wouldn't get all that jumbled in the PFW's brain here. So I do want to follow on some of what you're saying in enthusiasm, which is we've talked about this in the past, about recognition, being recognized, and this is, I think I mentioned this in one of the podcasts, I think, Rowan Williams at the Yale Divinity School giving a talk about the power of being recognized for who you are, and he, I had spoken to him beforehand, and then later I went up to him and I said, that's what you did to me. I was with him once for 2 hours, and he recognized me, and the power of being recognized. The second thing is belonging. We make as a core value here at St. Mark's, belonging in the community. We describe ourselves as a community of love in a broken world. And Sunday at our picnic, somebody who was new to our community said to me that she had been to many churches, and this is not a diss on other churches. It just happens to be the charism of our church. That was a footnote I inserted here. But this was maybe the first church where she was kind of welcomed in community, and people spoke with each other and received a sense of belonging. We have a great desire and a great need. I mean, in some sense, we're all in elementary school, right? We want to be recognized, and we want to belong. And then I just want to comment on overlooking what you just said, that word overlook. Wow, am I fired up about that. So last night I was in a very, very difficult position, and I was really, really down. And so I went for a walk, and somebody had said something to me that really, really was painful to me. And I had to figure out what to do with it. And I thought this person had no intention of that. This was about me and not about this person. And as I was walking along, I got thinking in terms of what you were just mentioned there, that I needed to just go, hey, this is about your activity, not about what happened. And I just simply need to overlook, move forward, not count the costs, not hold anything, just move on. And I swear, in about 10 strides, I went from being in the dumpster to going, you know what, tomorrow's going to be a good day. I'm good. And so I do believe, and this gets back to this thing about do not judge. It's not that you don't see. It's not that you don't judge. It's that you decide, you make the decision that that's not going to be the defining thing. And I am going to overlook that, which I think is a super cool phrase. I'm going to overlook that, and I'm going to find the grace, the person, all that stuff, instead of, that we may experience emotionally. It's this overlooking, and that overlooking, or what Rowan Williams, you had talked about in another podcast about Rowan Williams and his concept of forgiveness.
Oh, yeah.
And forgiveness makes community, because if you do not forgive, you cannot live together in love, because we all bang around and insult each other and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so that's part of what makes it. That's about the receiver's heart to say, okay, I receive, even if I may have check that at the door and just let it be.
Yeah, it's game over if we don't let people off the hook sometimes.
It's game over.
Yeah.
How to shrink your world, live in judgment.
Yeah.
How to unshrink your world, overlook, forgive,
Yeah.
and have a hospitable heart. I mean, back to what this passage was about.
Yeah.
Hospitality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Amen, brother.
Okay. Amen, sister. Okay, everybody. Thanks for hanging in with us. We missed John today, but we got Rob back there. We took a picture of Rob earlier because he was looking so cool as he was fixing stuff up.
He's got a lot of gear.
He's got a lot of gear. These headphones on. He's got his LeBron headphones on. Anyway, we do thank you and are grateful to you for participating long distance in our podcast, and we do enjoy it when you reach out or is fascinated by the comments that might come back, good, bad, or indifferent. So God bless you. Peace be with you. We look forward to chatting with you again in our communal midrash. Take care. God bless.